All right, well, welcome everyone. Excited to be here with Alicia Campbell. I'll hand it over in just a second, but very quickly, I wanted to thank a couple people and give you a little information about where you are. So this is the Jake Jabs Event Center, and this is part of the business school as a whole. But as the Jake Jabs Center for Entrepreneurship, we're very excited to host the entire people track this week with all the incredible sessions and incredible entrepreneurs from around Denver. Also want to point out and thank Emerge, who's back in the corner there. They are sponsoring the People Track, so they'll be here all week as well, and you can chat with them about any questions you have. But as far as the Jake Jab Center for Entrepreneurship and the programs that we have, we're not only a resource center that partners with local community members and opportunities to build the entrepreneurship network of Denver and ecosystem, but also have some incredible academic programs. So one real quick thing I want to share with you is that we launched a brand new Master's in Entrepreneurship this fall. It's the only of its kind in Colorado, so the only MS Entrepreneurship. It's very flexible. It's any 10 entrepreneurship classes. It's in-state tuition for all, and then additional scholarship money for in-state students. So obviously that was a real high-level quick overview, but if you have questions on any of those programs, again, Emerge is in the back, I'll be in the back, and now I'm going to hand it over to Alicia.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, you're good to go.
Is this good? Can you hear me? It feels weird. Okay. Thank you all for coming. I am not sure if this is more scary than presenting to a classroom full of 8th graders like I did a couple of months ago, so just be kind. They already thanked the sponsors, but thank you, Emerge, for hosting the People Track this year, my favorite track, obviously. Here's our session at a glance, so we can just all do an intro, and then we'll talk through what does it mean to be inclusive, how to identify the blind spots that you or your organization may have, and then some sustainable strategies to implement a DEI initiative or maybe improve what you already have. And then I have a few resources, and then we'll leave it open for Q&A if you have any questions. So my name is Alicia. I am a mom of 4. That I always lead with that because that's the most important to me and near and dear to my heart. I also am the president and DEI champion of American Marketing Association here in Colorado. I also own a small virtual assistant agency called Creative Plan Her, and I'm a cupcake connoisseur. But really, I only like funfetti cupcakes, so I guess that doesn't really matter. So understanding inclusion, there's a lot of different components to this being inclusive piece, right? I think a lot of times we want to just look at how somebody looks physically, whether that's racial identity, whatever their gender preference is, and there's much more to it than that, right? And one of my examples is with American Marketing Association. We say that we're committed to this thing, we do this thing, and then we get to our programming and we're excluding a lot of people, right? It's being in a different mindset and doing something that's different than what you're used to doing. It's also surrounding yourself by people that might not look like you, that don't identify by you, that have walked a different path than you have walked. So embracing these differences, also equal opportunities. So when we talk about equality, right, I think that the other key piece to that is this equity. So when we're doing programming and we're trying to be more inclusive, is it accessible to everybody? We think about the types of programming that we have, who are we marketing to? You know, traditionally, no shade on UCD since we're here, but we're doing traditional university students, and we know that we're here with Denver Startup Week, and there's so many small businesses, entrepreneurs, and people that we're leaving out of these conversations. So really understanding how and what you are trying to get across and making sure that the people that are otherwise forgotten about can also participate. Fostering empathy and understanding. So a lot of times it's very easy to just be laser focused. I have this goal, I want to get here, I want to do the thing. And again, that kind of excludes some people. It might not be a collaborative working environment. It might make folks feel uncomfortable, and you don't want that. You know, you need to stay approachable and welcoming and inviting. So the barriers. Any thing come to mind when you think about, I want to do better about being inclusive? I want to do better about making sure that our board, for example, because we're a nonprofit, that our board is diverse or our programming is diverse. What kind of barriers come to mind when you think about, I'm trying to do the thing, but this is in the way? Any thoughts, feedback? Competing priorities. What else?
People who want others to do it, but they don't want to do it.
And when you say others to do it, is it the DEI thing?
Yeah, that's what I call them this time. But I'll be really frank, like the upper levels, being really excited about having a statement, but really not excited about having accountability.
The leadership buy-in, right? What else?
Accessibility barriers
Accessibility barriers. Like,
for people with disabilities, invisible or visible.
gotcha. So like website accessibility, do they need accommodations, maybe an interpreter, whether that's sign language or a different language? Yeah?
Finding experience in the roles.
What was that? I'm sorry?
Finding experience in the roles.
Yep.
There is board members, and you find a lot of pushback too from other leaders as well, that person's not qualified enough, or when usually they have different experience too.
Right.
Another two, one is just like the ability for people to speak up for themselves, to state that they need accommodations, and then the fear of like loss of productivity because of accommodations.
That's a good one. Never thought of that. Loss of productivity, right? That's hard. We just go, and we forget, right? We forget, and then now we've just excluded a group of individuals, right? Anything else before we move on? So mindset, right? I think that we have the best intentions when it comes to being inclusive. We, on paper, we have this idea and all of those things, but then we go to do the thing and it's not really there. And my example is, clearly, I'm a woman of color, right? I'm looking over our social media that's going out and it's all white people. Not because Jessie doesn't have this initiative that's important to her, but Jessie is not a woman of color, not a person of color. So she just doesn't think, you have to, and for me, right, I have to be strong enough to have this conversation with her to also not offend her, right? She didn't do it on purpose. It's just not something that she's used to doing because she's doing what's familiar, what just comes to mind for her, right? So it's really just being courageous enough to have those conversations, to bring those things up when situations arise, either intentionally or unintentionally, right? Getting the buy-in from your leadership, from your board, from your volunteers, from your staff, whoever that is, right? Hey, this is the thing that we're doing. If you're not on board, this might not be a good fit for you because we're gonna do the thing with or without you, right? And if they're not on board and they're not bought in, why aren't they? Is there something that makes them uncomfortable? Is it the way that you presented it? How can you find this like common ground to get everybody on the same page? And then the awareness piece, right? So to your point, like we don't always think about when we're hosting an event on Eventbrite, having an accommodations page, right? So who on your team is responsible for doing that? That's a real question. Everybody's responsibility, regardless if you have the DEI director, regardless if you have, it's everybody's job to stay committed to this thing. Because one person can't push this boulder uphill, right? One person can't have the same perspective, right? I have the perspective of a non-traditional college student, a woman of color, but that makes me blind to other things, right? So I can't be the only one to do it. And resources. So when we think about resources, not just a person or an individual, but what other things, right? What kind of materials, what kind of books, what kind of podcasts, what other organizations can you partner with to help you with these things? Bless you. Thanks. So this is really the nitty-gritty part, right? Like creating the sustainable strategies. And there's no secret sauce, there's no hidden agenda here. It's really developing the plan. And you have to develop the plan based on what you actually have the ability to do. And sometimes that's like a hard truth to face because you might not have what you need to execute this plan right this second. But you can still draft it. You can still look at where you're strong, where are the opportunities, and who do you need to get this ball rolling. So first and foremost, why are you even doing this? Why is this important to you? Because if you don't have that locked in, it doesn't really even matter. Because if you don't know why you're doing it, then how are you matching the brand? How are you developing a narrative? And how are you going to create something on an ongoing basis that you don't have to really think about, right? And aligning this why with what you've been doing on the daily basis. Does this match mission, vision, and values? Does this match your brand? Is this going to speak to your audience? Because if you're trying to start over, then that's a whole nother situation, right? We already kind of talked about identifying your resources, but who can help you? Is that a chamber of commerce that has classes, that has whatever that looks like? Do you have the people that you need on your team that are going to help you do this thing? Or is it going to be a constant uphill battle in that regard? Partnering with other diverse organizations and then reviewing, revising, and refreshing, because what you start with today might not match what you need to do 6 months from now, right? It's not enough to say, ooh, some stuff is happening out in the world. There's people getting shot, there's people getting arrested, and we have to have a statement. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about staying consistent and acknowledging all of the things, because sometimes doing just this little bit is just as offensive as not doing it at all. So if you can't be consistent with it, you should probably just slide over here until you're ready. So here are some helpful resources. Has anybody heard of Shop BIPOC? Yay. So Shop BIPOC is a directory of service providers, vendors that are all businesses owned by people of color. So caterers, coaches, photographers, whatever that looks like, right? And the reason why I call this out is because let's say that your website is beautiful, you have this DEI statement, you have people helping you, and then we go to your website and everybody looks the same. Or when you're having an event and all of your vendors all look the same. That's not really executing your strategy, right? You're saying it, you're doing a good job saying it, but you're not actually doing it. So when we talk about having this commitment, this initiative, and creating something that's sustainable, we have to see it all the way through. It's not a one and done situation. So I encourage you and your employer or your business or whatever it is to go to Shop BIPOC. I see your hand up. Psst. Oh, it wasn't up. Okay, sorry. I encourage you to go to shopbipoc.com and just take a little look-see-loo, see what you might have. I mean, they have everything there. The diversity movement. So American Marketing Association is actually partnered with the diversity movement. They have a whole resource library of like little micro videos. So less than 3 minutes to talk through equitable hiring strategies, developing a marketing plan, dealing with microaggressions, any of that stuff that lives in the diversity movement. And then, of course, I'm plugging American Marketing Association, but we have a strong commitment to DEI, to making sure that we are providing resources and education to all marketers, right? To all, and marketers doesn't mean that you're a CMO or that you're a social media manager. If you're a small business owner, at some point you wear that marketing hat, right? At some point you have to reach the mass audiences. And then this nappy.co, so if you are ever in a situation where you're looking for diverse images or mostly that's a good resource for where to find those. Also, Canva does a really good job now too if you have Canva Pro. Unsplash is another one. And that was like really fast, y'all, like really, really fast. So any questions?
You work for smaller organizations and they may not have anyone dedicated, as you said, ever needs to be a partner. What are some things that you would do, say, put forward to help get it going and not feel that
That's a great question. So for me personally, I just tap into my network. For example, like American Marketing Association, I mean, there's nobody else that looks like me on the board, right? And there's also holidays that come up that I can't speak to, so I need to tap into people that do. Like, I don't know what to say for National like Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm not Hispanic, so reaching into people that you know in your network and your community. Again, there's the Chamber of Commerce for literally everything. Reaching out there, but I really think that it's bringing forth the importance of doing this. And so if you have maybe at least one coworker or staff member, if you're the boss, that can really help you champion this initiative. And if it seems like too much all at once, I think you can break it up in steps, right? We want to start by doing a better job about what our website looks like. Let's start by supporting a local small business when we're going to go order 500 swag bags. Could be something like that. Mm-hmm.
I'm Fred Davis. I work with startups to find talent, or just talent in general. So just that plug, and I'm glad to help out for free. Honestly, there's no catch to it. Just whatever you can do to support y'all in this topic. But through your wisdom and insight, have you had companies talk about the difference between like racial equity versus diversity, and how have you coached them on that? Because it seems like people get confused on that.
Yeah, so the equity piece, right? That is what we talk about when we say, does everybody know about this opportunity, right? Where is this being posted? How are we marketing it? Who's doing the interviewing? How does the equity piece means that I have the same opportunity as Angela or Robert, whatever that looks like. And so when we look at the equity piece, and what's really hard about that though is because everybody looks great on paper when they send a resume through, and that's great. And then when we get in the interview space, it could be one small thing. I didn't like how long her nails were. I don't like her natural hair. I don't like, whatever that is, right? Like, that is not really equitable, is it? Just her nails can she type with long nails? Okay, that's all that matters. Like, is she dressed professionally? Doesn't matter how her hair is. And so the reason why I say that is because before this venture, I came from healthcare, 14 years, and I found myself not wearing certain nail colors. Never wearing braids in a bun, going to a thing. That's not professional at all, right? But that doesn't make me less qualified, and I think that there is a piece of us that is hard to kind of move past some of those things that we've always just been used to doing. But it's everybody's job to speak up in that regard, right? Like, one person can't do the thing. So if you're in this interview trying to staff this position and I say her nails are too long, then it's your job to be an ally and say, what's that have to do with anything? She has an MBA. She worked at this place.
Can I expose, I think that there's a difference, I just don't understand the difference. Can you help with like a definition?
I'm still, I mean, the cool thing about this work to me, is that you're always learning. Like 5 years ago, I didn't know how to buy a car.
Right.
So, but I know, having worked briefly with the city, that I'll give an example. So, like and tell me if I'm wrong. With the Human Resources Department, they talked about a DE&I initiative, diversity equity initiative, right? It's pretty much centered around recruitment, retention, and development of diverse talent, gender, ethnicity, military, and ability. Racial equity was about data that could be, in addition to what was, so here, data that could be pulled based on racial identification. So I could find out things around healthcare, judicial system, education, so that it was data versus an initiative and a strategy, which is what we're being sent on today. So it gets confusing because sometimes people are like, well, I don't. Can these two things work together? And I think, heck yeah, they can. They have to.
equality part and then this equity. So there was a meme like 3 people go to this baseball game, right? And they're standing on the, whatever you call that, the outside of the fence, right? There's a 6-foot guy who was standing on a thing and he could see way high, right? And then there's another, I don't know, guy, girl, whatever, another person, a little shorter. His box, her box is a little bit smaller so they could just barely see over the thing. And then this poor little kid that can't see anything at all. So it's an equal opportunity. They're all there. They can essentially see the game, right? But why does this guy need a box and he can clearly see straight through? This person maybe needs to switch the shorter box and then give the little baby the tallest box so they can all see. Now we have an equitable situation because everybody is here where we all have a seat at the table, but we can all also participate. So when we talk about equity and like disparities there, it's, well, some people don't have internet, right? So how can they even apply for that job? Some people have maybe a sort of disability where they can't necessarily read, or if they have to take this test to apply, well, I need test accommodations. That's not necessarily an equitable process, right? Is that helpful?
Yeah, so if I took like a current example that's big in the news right now, like Google has all of these initiatives for inclusion and for diversity and even a little bit of belonging, but now we've got the Excel that says, hey, there's a really significant gap in how different races are being paid, or allegedly, in case there's anybody in the room. Is that
They're being paid differently, or?
Yeah, so apparently, allegedly, according to this Excel, the black Googlers are being paid significantly less than the white Googlers. So that would be like an example. You have a lot of like.
I have feels about that.
I have a lot of feelings about that as well. That would be an example of the 2 terms. Okay, thank you so much.
Equitable pay is what we've been talking about. So there's, that's an example of the data that you could pull. You could also look at retention. EEO, if there's a government contract, certain parts of your company needs to have. So,
Thank you for the language.
You're welcome. Yeah, and I think in that example, right, there's a couple of different things that might contribute to that. You could also probably Google this, but women of color specifically have a harder time advocating for themselves, asking for the money that they deserve, right? And so that's already this. It could also be that the employer is looking at where you came from, what you said your salary is there, and then they know what they can offer you. If I offer you a little bit more, even though it's not in alignment with your coworker, then that should be enough. And people still aren't saying like, actually, no, I want to be in the 50% range and what you advertise is this, and that's what I want. That's what I deserve.
I just had something to add to the potential options or reasons that it may be that I think the data point was that black women were paid less, or the black workers were paid less than the white. My understanding is that that's part of the algorithms, or the automated process when it reviews applications, and employers may not know this, but the algorithm is inherently biased, so it can automate and kind of separate out BIPOC people of color in order to check those maybe 4 or 5 designated racial boxes that were built into the algorithm. So one thing to think about, I think, when I'm thinking about, say, your applicant pool, is that your automated process may also not be adding to that equity.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Yeah.
In light of the recent Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, are you seeing any emerging trends from companies? I think my experience coming out of 2020 and the George Floyd protests, a lot of companies made a lot of big commitments that they're not
that you go research them on the internet and you're like, huh, you haven't said anything since 2020.
Yeah, they're not holding up the bargain, and I think they're even more disincentivized coming out of this Supreme Court ruling. And I'm just curious if you have any you don't have to fix it. I'm just curious.
I don't.
What's to come.
Yeah, I don't know. Can't speak to that. I'm a small business owner, so I stay out of the weeds of what goes on in corporate, and I like it in this place, actually. But what I do is just encourage my peers who do still work in those environments of like, hey, it's still your responsibility to do that, regardless of the buy-in from leadership, regardless of what your website says or blah, blah, like you have to do it. Because if only one person is picking up the ball, like we're not gonna make any progress. I think the other thing is just being aware, and if you are in a situation or you witness a thing and you don't say anything, then you're a part of the problem, right? It's everybody's job to do what is right. Well, right here. I didn't forget about you.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the customers that I support, they have a DE&I coordinator, but in their work environment, that position is just seen as like merely a checkbox, and so that one individual feels a lot of burnout and they feel a lot of pushback. So how would you suggest providing insight about how to change that culture? That's a big question, but it's going to take a lot of time.
It's going to take time, and don't do this, y'all, but I will abandon ship. Like if I can't get the support that I need, like what am I doing here? You hired me to do a thing, you clearly said that it was important, and then you're not giving me the resources or the support that I need to do it. So there, in that regard, she could keep fighting the fight. It could be a month, it could be 6 months, who knows? But what I do know is there's somebody that is going to recognize her initiative, what she's trying to do, realize that it's important, and fully embrace that. Again, it goes back to some of these folks are checking the box and they're not really ready for it. Not only are they not ready for it, but they don't know how to support her, right? She's getting burnt out because they don't know how to support her. So either they're not trusting that she can take this thing through and through and she literally just needs their approval, or they really don't care. And if they don't care, then there's nothing you can do about that, really.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to budget that she needs to get the resources, and because the individual's leadership doesn't see the importance outside of just having the position, it feels like a constant demand for her.
Is there, what type of budget things is she asking for?
It could be anything from training, professional development for her team, or across the organization. I would say that's mainly it, is around professional development.
Got it. And is there no HR department? Or she is the HR?
There is, but there's like professional development as it relates to things outside of the DE&I bucket, and I'm looking at that as a separate bucket, if that makes sense.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not a separate bucket. It goes right in line with everything else. When you get onboarded here, you get onboarded to this thing also. Like, we make it important in everything that we do. So she could advocate that HR hire a consultant to come rip it all apart, and sometimes it takes an outside perspective, right? Because, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
One more thing, I'll leave us all alone. So I'm January's advisory group. I actually do what you're asking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially what I've experienced in corporate and local and state government is that DEI is built into the HR component of it, but the actual workflows, lean processes, customer service delivery, where they make their revenue, they're not building equity into that because they're not seeing it that way, which we absolutely need diversity in HR, we need that in product development, but they're missing the opportunity to make money off of that racial gap. And I guess what I would recommend to your friend, without knowing anything about her sector, her business, or her position, is that if she can tie it to revenue, if you do X, then in 6 months when you're trying to buy Y, we can do 1.5 million, 1.6 billion. This is your client, right? She needs to show them numbers. And if they still ignore her when she's brought money to the table, that's a larger problem.
And realistically, like when you talk about dollars associated with just, if we just look at resources, she leaves that position, right? Now you're spending all this money to maybe recruit, to post the job, to interview, like all of these dollars are now out the door. I mean, in terms of resourcing, like that's always my pitch. Okay, you cannot invest in this, but she's not going to be happy, and then you have to post the job, and then you have to recruit, and then you have to train, and then if you just, okay, I support you. How can I help you? And really leadership, just being vulnerable and transparent. I don't know the answer. I need you to help me. That's a leadership thing. Tell me how to do this. Tell me how I can support you. Any other questions? Yeah.
If you have a plan in place, what metrics or outcomes should you be tracking to ensure that you're on the right track and that the strategy is working?
So that's a very great question. It's kind of loaded. In terms of what we do at American Marketing Association is when we have speakers, 50% of them need to be represented from this community, this community, this community. That's an easy metric to meet. In terms of, same with social media, like we don't send anything out that does not have some sort of diversity element to it, and that's gender, race, location, all of these things. And website, same thing. So I think that I don't have a good answer for you in terms of other types of metrics, but when we look at just, we focus on, is our digital footprint matching what we actually say we're doing? And that's how we determine. Also, we look at like our membership base. If they fill, some people don't fill out their profile. My profile is not filled out, but we do it in that way. And then just surveys to see like, how did you, it's really the qualitative piece of this thing, right? You got to see how people are feeling. Sometimes getting into that quantitative is hard because, like me, if you're like me, you don't fill out a profile. But really asking people, do you feel like this programming was X? How did you feel about this newsletter? How do you feel about this new product? Whatever that looks like. And then you have to set a baseline. And how are you doing? Move it. What can we improve? What can we change?
You talk about qualitative data, and buy-in, and, now you're seeing more people included in advertising and marketing. I think, that's where you get your information to show your leaders that, look, this is the return on investment for this ad campaign, this marketing campaign. What are those numbers? Those are the numbers that help provide that. Mm-hmm. Stability and sustainability
right.
for a consultant or even the company themselves.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in those big dollars, I kind of shy away from that too, because then that's still excluding the small business owner, the solopreneur, right? They can't afford those big advertising campaigns. They're not even going to see your campaign because they might not be on the internet or whatever the case may be, right? Like they can't afford X, which makes this less equitable.
Right, but what I'm saying is that those big companies are using the people like you, like me, like us
Mm-hmm.
in their campaigns. So the small business could use the data of the big businesses and say, you know what, that speaks to me, that's me represented. And we want to get there. But in order for us to get there, you have to invest in us. Mm-hmm. Because this is what the end result looks like.
Yep. And part of that is just building your social capital, right? Like sometimes you won't have a seat at the table for whatever reason that is, but do you have somebody that is at the table that can help you, that can foster that for you? That's also part of this equitable piece, right? I mean, I think if we're building DEI strategies and we're trying to do it, it's also like, don't forget to look back. don't forget to show somebody else or tell somebody else the lessons that you've learned along the way. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? There's like
surveys a minute ago.
Yeah.
We've done surveys with limited response. How can we increase those numbers, response rates?
We are incentivizing them now, and being upfront. Hey, this is going to take 2 minutes, or hey, this is 5 questions. Like, just being candid and upfront with it. The other thing is personally, and I don't know how large the audience is, right? But like for our events, there's 20 to 40 people. I'll send an email, like from my email, hey, can you take this survey? Hey, can you do this thing? A lot of times that's all it takes, right? Because we're all so busy that email gets lost, or maybe it went to spam, and sometimes people just need a little nudge. But incentivizing it always works. Hey, you can win $25 Amazon card. Oh, I'm taking the survey.
The higher up the email comes, the better it will hurt. The top person gets simpler.
Yeah, like literally from your email. And in Gmail, you could do the mail merge thing. It makes it really easy. It looks like it came from you, and it really didn't. Whole thing. Any other questions? Is there one thing that makes this really hard? Is it just the buy-in? Is it resources? Is it you're not even sure how to approach this?
That was a question.
That is a question.
Okay. I would say it's the continued energy that everyone needs to keep putting forth consistently. You know, people get all excited about something and then move on to the next shiny object.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guilty of that myself. And I think that's one of the hardest things is continue to keep up the energy and maintain the support around you, keeping everyone else going too.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to use the term complicit in complacency. You know, if you're complacent, you're complicit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah. And that's just why it's important to have several partners in this, right? Because then not one person gets burned out. It also allows you to like, ooh, I want to do this potluck because I like whatever the holiday is, and just like share that responsibility, because it is a shared responsibility. And then it doesn't just like die on the side of the road because nobody has time to do it.
I was just going to say, I think the way we lead is by showing the success beyond the label.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, the board probably really gets tired of me saying, nope, we're not using that picture. Nope, we're not having this or all this stuff. But what they're seeing is people are showing up at our events that didn't show up last year. Members are joining this year that haven't joined in the past. We're getting inquiries and things like that. So it's tough. It is hard to do it, but if you just stay consistent, things will start turning a corner, right? People just need to know. I think that's the other part too, is American Marketing Association has done a great job with this audience, but the people that I know don't know anything about American Marketing Association because we're not talking to those people. Our website didn't look like those people. The programming was not relatable to those people. So it takes all of us, right? And they're starting to see, we're starting to see a community, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to build, is a community of folks that find value in everything that we're doing, not just the DEI part, all of it.
How much of this approach overlaps with other change management or scaling approaches? I think that the recognizing the DEI isn't exactly the same as a general change management initiative, but it seems also to share a lot of it. Is the work and the knowledge that you have overlap with other kind of change management initiatives or scaling initiatives? I think about those points of getting things that are integrated to create culture or change culture inside an organization, depending on where it is and its size?
I don't think that they overlap. I think they run parallel because I feel like when you're doing anything, any new process, or to your point of this change management, like we should walk hand in hand when we're trying to do this thing, and there should be a process, there should be oversight, and how, if we do X, how is that going to impact over here, and having a collaborative conversation, a discussion, and really figure out, like, what does this look like for us? If we go full gamut over here, what does that mean right here? But I don't think that, and I think that's probably part of the education piece too, right? Like, again, DEI doesn't live separate to other processes. DEI lives in the same space. If we're trying to change anything, we should be having conversations about, is this going to be able to be read with a screen reader? Is this thing, like, it should be part of that conversation, no matter what it is that you're doing.
Can I speak to that as a change expert?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can only speak for corporate, just to be really clear. I know nothing about governments or nonprofits. And on the global level, the singular D to H myself, right? D and I program, a corporation that actually had results, was run as a program embedded in functional areas with heavy change management support. But all of the delivery and expertise was done by the people who were experts in those areas. And from a corporate perspective, at least, and I'm not in corporate anymore, but from a corporate perspective, at least, a lot of the times, we grab someone who's interested, who primarily looks like me, a middle-aged white lady, and we throw them out there. And I think it's really crucial. I love that you brought up change management, because that made a massive difference with project management support and then embedded in the functional areas. Or budgets. And budget. And a lot of failure.
A lot of failure, you said? Yeah. I mean, it is hard, right? It's hard having, to your point, in corporate, it's the older white lady to be like, hey, we're gonna do, and I'm like, okay. Go ahead, do the thing. Let me know how that works. I'm not doing it. You can do it. But it doesn't, I think that it takes a courageous person though, and this awareness, and when we talk about mindset, it takes a special person to even be aware, like, ooh, they're asking me to do something that I think I know how to do, but there are also some things that you just will never experience. There's some things that I won't know because I haven't walked in your shoes, and so that's why it's important to, like, who is all here that's going to make this thing work, to make sure that we have these checks and balances in place before we just go blow the thing up and hope that it works. Any other questions? Y'all want to come join me on this DEI journey with American Marketing Association? Okay, that's fine. So it doesn't pay very well. And by it doesn't pay well, it's volunteer, so sure. We're hiring. Free coffee. I feed you. Anything else? Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.